Hello, how are you? My name's Emma. I'm an artist, and this term I've been helping people to create artwork around the theme of kindness and kindness to the planet. And this week we're going to have a look at another area of the world, another habitat that needs our protection and our help because mainly of climate change. So we're going to be looking and making a piece of artwork about the polar regions of the world. So we're going to be thinking about polar regions at the top of the planet, the North Pole, and the polar regions at the bottom of the planet, the South Pole. Okay, so the Arctic and Antarctic. If you want to, have a look on a map, see if you can find them. We're going to be creating a piece of artwork and we're going to be thinking about the animals that might live there as well that need our help. So, like usual, I'm going to point my camera down so you can see what we're doing. Right, so today we're going to start off by making the seas around the polar regions. So I've got a nice piece of white paper, but it's not going to stay white for long. We're going to, I think first of all, we're going to draw that line that we see when we look out across the sea, where the sea meets the sky. We're going to draw a horizon on there. It doesn't have to be completely straight, but it usually goes right across the picture, doesn't it? I think I'm going to put mine about here, right across the top. And you see, I'm drawing a white line on some white card. That's a white oil pastel. You might have a white crayon. You might think that's a bit strange. You could use a blue crayon if you wanted to. I'm just drawing white. We'll see why in a minute. Actually, I'm going to turn it around that way so you can see better. And then I'm going to put in a huge, great big area of blue paint or blue ink for my sea. And before I do that though, I might add a few little white flecks. These are going to be little tiny bits of ice. They're kind of floating around in the sea. Because remember, the seas around the Arctic and the Antarctic are absolutely frozen, aren't they? Really cold. And we find lots of icebergs there. So I've got my brush. Can my brush fit in my pot? Phew. There we are. Ah, look, I'm going to paint on this blue. Can you see what happened? Everywhere that I put some white oil pastel or white wax, I get a little gap. Yeah? Right, so I'm going to fill in the sea here. La 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 la. There we are. Oh, look, a few more are appearing now. And this process, we call it a resist process because the oil pastel is resisting the paint. If you haven't got coloured inks, you can use watercolours, you can use watered down poster paints, anything that you've got. You could use acrylic paints watered down as well. Oh, that looks quite nice. I quite like that. Right, and here I am. I've got up to my line. Can you see there's my line for the horizon? But what happens if I carry on painting over the top? Oh, we can get some sky in there as well. And sometimes when you look at the sea, if it's a sunny day, it might look blue. If it's a cloudy day, it might look like the colour of the clouds, mightn't it? And sometimes when you go to the seaside, the sea looks a bit grey or a bit black or a bit inky. And I imagine that the sea at the Arctic is going to be quite dark, isn't it? Because it's super deep. So I'm going to put some darker blue on there. So if you've got different blues, you can mix it up. I always like it because it makes it more interesting to see how dark this one is. And then we'll crack on with the next bit. Oh, look, I quite like that. I'm going to put some splodges in there. So you can have fun making your sea as dark as you like it, as inky as you like it. There we are. Okay, sea completed. I quite like that. Excellent. Right, put my inky brush out the way, put my inks there. Don't want to knock them over, that would be disaster. Right, so on the next piece of paper, we're going to draw the things that we find floating, hopefully, in the polar regions. We're going to draw some icebergs. So what I'd like us to do is to think about how we look at the landscape. So up close, we might have things that are in the foreground, we call that the foreground because they're right next to us. Right at the back, we might have things a long way away in the distance. And then we've got a middle ground as well. So let's see if we can create icebergs for all of those areas. So at the front here, I'm going to use the corner shapes. I'm going to draw some great big ziggy-zaggy icebergs, and they're going to be in the foreground. And then I'm going to do, I think, a great big iceberg in the middle here. And that's going to be in the middle ground of my painting. Or might have to look at some pictures of some icebergs. I don't think I'm getting this the right shape. It's always good to check to see if you get the right shapes, isn't it? And then maybe a few little dinky icebergs off in the distance. What do you think? We can do some cracks in there. There we are. And it's really important that we look after the polar areas of the world because lots of the water is locked up in these huge, great big icebergs and the big ice sheets that covers these Arctic areas. If they start to melt because of global warming, it can cause huge flooding all the way around the world, not just in the polar regions. And also, we'll find out that these places are home to pretty awesome animals. Right, so have you got a pair of scissors? Just cut out your icebergs. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad I made it so zigzaggy now. It's going to take forever. But hey, you've got a bit longer than me, haven't you? You'll do a neater job. So there's two big icebergs for the foreground. There we go. So we can add those to our picture right here. Instead of going to keep the corner bits, will you just match up the corners? There we are. Goes like that. Looks pretty cool, doesn't that? And then a big one for the midground. This one's going to be floating off in the distance, I think, in the sea. There we are. Whoa, cool, hey? So you can stick that down with a bit of glue or a bit of tape. And then some tiny ones. They're not really tinier, they're just a long way away. So because they're a long way away, they actually look smaller, don't they, to us? So they're maybe going to go out on the horizon. There we are, in the distance. Oh, I'm quite pleased with this. I thought I'd made a mess of the icebergs, but I think they're going to be okay. There we are. Right here. That one might be just beat down a little bit. Yeah. So you can have fun placing them all around. So now we've made our icy environment. We need some animals. So what I've done here is I drew a picture and I cut out a picture of a polar bear. There we are. You can have a go at sketching, or you can find a picture online and copy that. Now you've got to decide which polar region you want. You've got to decide if you're going to go North Pole or South Pole. We find our polar bears up in the Arctic, in the North Pole. We don't find them in the South Pole. And if we wanted to do things from the South Pole, you could do penguins, because penguins live anywhere in the southern part of the world, in the southern hemisphere. But we do not find penguins at the North Pole, at the top, okay? So you've got to decide whether you're doing Arctic or Antarctic, and that will decide what animals you use. So now you've just got to find a picture, or a place, put your polar bear. I'm not quite sure. He's looking a bit sad, isn't he? I think because he doesn't want all the polar ice to melt. I'm going to put him there maybe, and a little one there. Maybe I'll move him across. What do you reckon? You can have fun moving yours about. Okay, so have fun making your polar landscapes. See you.